Have you ever felt like you weren't alone, even when no one was there? Tonight we're diving into some of the creepiest ghost stories ever told. True encounters that will make you question every shadow, every sound, and every chill down your spine. From haunted hospitals to restless Asais spirits that refuse to move on, these are the kinds of stories you don't want to hear alone at night. So grab your headphones, turn off the lights, and let's get into it. I think it was more than 5 years ago when I heard this story. It was a chilling experience told to me by my girlfriend at the time. As I recall it now, I'll write it here in her own voice. Every morning on my way to work, there was a street I always took. It was a straight road leading to the train station, and there were usually quite a few people. At some point, I started passing the same man every day. He looked like a businessman in a suit with messy hair, walking with his head slightly down. Plain looking, overall. But for some reason, his face stuck in my mind. I guess it was because I always passed him in the same spot every morning. Always at the exact same place. Right at the street corner by the crosswalk. He would come walking from the other direction, and I would find myself following him with my eyes. Somehow I felt like he noticed me too. It wasn't that our eyes met, but just before we passed, I sensed him suddenly lift his face, and I would hurriedly avert my eyes. Days like that went on and on. Then one day, while browsing online, I happened to see an article about a crime. Curious, I clicked on it, and there was his face. I was shocked. It was exactly him. And the article said his body was discovered 2 years ago. It also said his identity had never been determined, and it was still an unsolved case. The cause of death was hemorrhagic shock. The victim had been stabbed about 30 times with a sharp blade, suggesting the attacker may have harbored deep resentment toward him. That's what the article said. What's that? But really, I had just passed him yesterday. Terrified, I changed my route to the station. It meant a longer walk, but I decided never to take that street again. For a while, nothing happened. I didn't see him anymore, and little by little, I began to forget. But then one day, I overslept, and in a rush to get to the station, I ended up taking that same street again for the first time in a while. And there he was, that man. He was standing at the corner, his back turned, completely still, not moving at all. Even as I walked closer, he didn't budge. And just as we passed, he suddenly turned his face. He was smiling. Just a little. I'll never forget that smile. Because no living person smiles like that. This is a story I witnessed as a child and didn't quite understand at the time. I was 8 years old. I'm 49 now. I've reflected on it a lot, and I consider it the most supernatural experience I've ever had in my life. My maternal grandfather had died, and my brother's mother and father returned to our hometown in the countryside of my state for the wake and burial. Back then, wakes were held in people's homes. I remember joking around with another cousin my age, since my brothers were a little older and the whole family was together, that normal funeral thing. Anyway, the wake was at night and the burial in the morning. I didn't even know what was happening. I didn't understand death, so I took it all as a joke. After everything, it got dark. We were planning to go back to the city the next day, and we all slept together in the house, the same one where the wake was held, my grandmother's house. I remember everyone talking, both adults and children, and because there were so many of us, some mattresses were laid out. My sister slept with my older brother and some cousins. My younger brother, who was still a baby, slept with my parents. I was supposed to sleep at my older sister's feet, but I remember not wanting to because I was scared. It was much closer to the door and the kitchen, and I didn't like it. So I asked to sleep with my mother, but she said that there wasn't room. Instead, she told me to sleep with my grandmother, who was already sharing her bed with another cousin. So I went there and stayed quietly. That was around midnight. Everyone was still talking until, one by one, people fell asleep. My grandmother was still talking with my mother. Then my father went to sleep. Then my mother. I tried to sleep but couldn't. My grandmother shook her foot to show she was awake, and when she stopped, I nudged her to wake her up, again because I didn't want her to fall asleep. Eventually she did, and everything went silent. It must have been around 2 or 3 a.m. At that point, I clearly heard the gate creak, as if someone had arrived. The dogs started barking exactly the way they always barked when my grandfather came home. They were his dogs. Then I heard footsteps in the courtyard. The house was a simple one, with a front and back entrance and a hallway that led to the back. To reach the back door, you had to walk through this hallway/garage. I started to hear footsteps going through that hallway toward the back door. That meant the person knew the layout of the house, but the back door was obviously locked. That's when I started waking my grandmother, saying, "Someone's in the yard. There are people out there." She told me, "Go to sleep, girl. There's no one there." But then I heard the back door opening. Literally, someone entering the house, very slowly. I pushed my grandmother again and said, "Grandma, someone has entered the house. There's someone inside." She replied, a little sleepily, but clearly listening, "It's your Uncle Lico. Go to sleep." But my Uncle Lico had already traveled to another city. He left right after the funeral. At that point, I was totally freaked out. My heart was racing, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack. Footsteps began to approach the kitchen. We were sleeping in the room where the wake had been. I felt someone's presence, but kept my eyes tightly shut. I didn't open them for anything, even though I could feel that presence nearby. I was paralyzed with fear. Eventually, as dawn approached, I saw a light coming in through the shuttered window. Around 5 a.m., I finally got the courage to open my eyes. Soon, everyone got up for coffee. It wasn't a dream. I clearly heard my grandmother and mother talking at the coffee table, saying my grandfather had come to say goodbye to us that night. My sister also confirms the story today. She says she felt embraced by something that night. I wonder what would have happened if I had slept at her feet. And perhaps the scariest part for me now, looking back, is that my grandmother heard it too. She didn't want to get up or comfort me by saying everything was fine. She literally told me it was my uncle, even though she knew he wasn't there. That means she also heard it and chose to ignore it. Clearly afraid, but not wanting to show it. This wasn't just something in my imagination. I don't believe anyone broke into the house. The dogs barked exactly as they did when my grandfather came home. The footsteps were his. The way the locked door opened. The walk through the kitchen. Everything was just as he used to do. I worked night shifts, 2200 to 0800 hours. The hospital is pretty big, with a lot of ground to cover, and we begin our shifts with duties divided up. I volunteered for lockups, which is when you ensure every door in the hospital is locked tight for the night. There was one area where the cleaning staff didn't leave until 0000 hours, and that was the clinic. It's 5 floors, and everything above the first is haunted. You'd think the morgue or other wings would house the spirits of children long gone. But nope. I've talked to the cleaning crews, and they were more than happy to leave when the time came, because they've heard and seen things in that clinic, and so have I. My duties were to ensure all lights were off, except for the lobby floor, and that all doors were secured until the morning unlock. I'd sweep each floor, about 10 minutes, double checking lights and locks. There, I'd hear distant footsteps, doors opening. Lights I knew I had turned off suddenly switched on again. I worked there for 3 months and came to expect it at that point, but one night really freaked me out. I was finishing the top floor at the last stop before I left the clinic when my blood froze. I heard giggling coming from one of the examination rooms. Light poured through the bottom crack of the door, a light I knew for sure I had clicked off. I shook my head and made my way to the elevator. I wasn't about to deal with that. I waited until daybreak, around 0500 hours, to deal with it. Hope you enjoyed the story.
Make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any stories you would like to share with us, our email is in the description. Let's continue.